Victorian Railways T class. The T class are a class of diesel locomotives built by Clyde Engineering, Granville, for the Victorian Railways between 1955 and 1968. History. In July 1954, the Victorian Railways placed an order with Clyde Engineering for 25, later extended to 27 diesel-electric electromotive diesel jet locomotives to partially dieselize country branch lines. In June 1959, the first of an additional 10 entered service. Although mechanically similar to the first batch, they differed by having a cab raised above the hood line. A further 10 entered service from December 1961. In September 1965, the first of an order for 32 was delivered. These differed by having a lower nose. A final order for 19 was delivered from April 1967. The last 5 were built with an extra 10 tons, 9.8 long tons, 11 short tons of ballast weight for improved adhesion, and low-speed controls for use as shunting locomotives in Melbourne. These were reclassified as the H-class shortly after being delivered. In July 1969, an additional flat-top unit was purchased second-hand from Australian Portland Cement, who had ordered it for use at its narrow-gauge Fyansford Cement Works Railway, Geelong, in 1956. Although outwardly similar to the original T-class units, it was fitted with dynamic brakes and became a regular on the steeply graded Cudgel line. Although ordered as branch line locomotives, as branch lines began to close, they were often used on main line services. In 1984/85, Martin and King, Somerton rebuilt 13 flat tops as P-class locomotives. This involved a new cab and car body, replacing the EMD 8-567C engine with an EMD 8-645E, replacement of the main generator and traction motors, and provision of a separate head and power generator. Many were withdrawn in the late 1980s with the arrival of the G-class locomotives. In October 1992, 6 low-nose locomotives were sold to Australian National, with 5 entering service as the CK class as shunters and bankers in Adelaide. All were included in the sale of Australian National to Australian Southern Railroad in November 1997. 1 was resold to SCT Logistics, with the remaining 4 operating on the narrow-gauge Eyre Peninsula Railway as of January 2014. Others were sold to Chicago Freight Car Leasing Australia, El Zorro Great Northern Rail Services, SCT Logistics, Southern Shorthall Railroad, and West Coast Railway. A number of the T-class have been preserved. Those remaining with V/line freight were included in the sale to Freight Australia, and in 2000, some stored examples were reactivated and fitted with standard gauge bogies to haul grain services in southern New South Wales. These passed with the Freight Australia business to Pacific National in August 2004. Subtypes. The class can be divided into 3 main styles by appearance: flat tops, T320, T346 first order. Based on electromotive diesel jet locomotive design, this order had a low cab and roof. High cabs T347, T356, and T357, T366 second and third orders. They differed from the flat tops by having a high cab, but were mechanically similar. The third order had an altered radiator design. Low nose T367, T386, T387, T396, T397, T406, and T407 to T417 fourth to seventh orders. The fourth order introduced a new low nose that provided greater driver visibility and a more modern generator. The sixth order introduced the newer EMD 645E engine, replacing the older EMD 567 used before. The H-class diesel-electric locomotive were part of the 7th T413, built in 1956 for the narrow-gauge Fyansford Cement Works Railway, Geelong, as done, without marker lights and with stock EMD footplates. In 1969, It was sold to Victorian Railways, renumbered T413, and had its footplates replaced with similar ones to those already on their pre-existing TS and marker lights added. T414, built in November 1956, as de Etwo for BHP, was used at their Iron Knob and Whyalla steelworks. It was not included in Morrison-Knudsen rebuild program like the rest of the class. In 2006, it was sold to SCT Logistics and rebuilt with a cab similar to those on the 4th and 5th generation TS controls laid out for long and leading, and renumbered T414. Status table. Model railways. HO scale. Since 2005, various plastic, ready-to-run models of the T-Class series of engines have been available. Flat-top engines. Indigo Rail Models BRM selling through Oxygen released a model of the first series T-Class locomotive in 2013. The first release was exclusively locomotives in the VR Blue livery, with variants for the periods 1955–1957, 1957–1970, and 1970–1980, and in both weathered and clean versions. All locomotives were fitted with full-depth valances. These effectively hid components which would later be made visible with the release of the P-Class engines. In late 2015, a second run of the engines was produced, this time with mostly cutaway valance types and in many more schemes. High and low nose engines. Austrains released the first ready-to-run plastic model of the T-Class diesel locomotive in late 2005, following the successful release of their X-Class range of locomotives. The original price point was $239 per engine. The run was announced as just Series 2, and 3 locomotives orders 3 to 7 in VR Blue, V/Line Orange, and CK locomotives in green. Later announcements expanded the range to include some engines in Freight Australia Green, H-Class engines, and in 2007, a run of West Coast Railway locomotives. The latter of these were offered at $120 each, partially because of an error at the design stage where the low-nose type livery sketches had accidentally been applied to CK bodies with thin steps. In May 2007, Oxygen released a series of T-Class locomotives in CF Claws blue and silver scheme and SSR yellow and black scheme. These were repainted Austrains models, produced at the same factory with the same tooling, but in the Oxygen box with a certificate of authenticity confirming that each engine was one of the batch of 200 for that identity. At the time it was made clear that those two color schemes will not be released again by any manufacturer. The engines retailed for $249 each. At some point between 2007 and 2009, Austrains reran the T-Class model with new numbers and upgrades including metal handrails. The new run included VR Blue, Freight Australia, and Great Northern. It may also have included V/Line Orange units, but with the same numbers as the first run, so it is difficult to be certain. Powerline's variant of the T-Class was an entirely new model, the first for the then new management of the company, with no parts recycled from previous models. A new mechanism was developed in India to make use of the 5-pole skew wound twin flywheel system, and, as has since become standard, the unit was fitted with all-wheel drive and all-wheel electrical pickup. RP-25-110 wheels were made standard. The units were also fitted with DCC decoders and NEM Dunny seat couplers as standard, although Caddy metal couplers are included in every box. Each unit was also fitted with separately applied detail parts like handrails, brake hoses, and grills, giving a much higher level of detail than previous models. The first run was to include initial releases of the VR and V/Line liveries on both body types and high-nose West Coast Railway and low-nose Freight Australia schemes. An offer was made to customers that if they paid $50 upfront, they would receive their models for $198. As of 2015, the recommended retail price $295. The engines were due to be released in 2004, but production line delays caused the announcement to be pushed back to October 2004 and the final release to early 2007. Because of the parallel development and release schedules between Austrains and Powerline, the company adopted the marketing slogan, "Do not buy any other T-Class until you see our T-Class." The final product is slightly smaller in all dimensions than the Austrian's units, and Powerline has claimed that all dimensions bar some valence and handrail measurements are within 0.5 m. To cover for variance, some engines were released with decals to alter pilot stripes. Valence units were also released separately to allow purchasers to modify or replace those provided. A second Powerline production run was hinted at in early 2006 and announced in mid-2007 with new models in new schemes. The second run also included a different electronics system because of reported reliability issues with the DCC chip in the first run. The new chip was marketed as having increased memory capacity. Advanced orders were being accepted from mid-2008 with a down payment of $75 and a total purchase price of $220. Delivery took place in October 2009. SDS model's first release of the retooled Austrian's T-Class due to be released in 2020 with the T2 series new tooling T347, T356, and T-3, T-4, T-5, and H-Class in both VR and V/line, with others coming later on. With a prepaid price of $245 for DC and $365 for DCC sound. To date, no models of T347, T356 have been released in ready-to-run plastic, though it is possible to mix/match parts between the BRM model and the high-nose model to achieve a workable result. Additionally, locomotive T414XD et al. Has never been released, but may be achievable by mixing BRM and low-nose components. T392 marked on order page as T393, corrected by 3 January 2005. References